This episode discusses suicide in an educational context. If you or someone you know is struggling, please take care while listening and seek support as needed. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to episode 3. So today we will be discussing homophobia and transphobia in my community of origin. That is the Syrian Jewish community. Last week we discussed the topic of suicide. That episode was a hard one for me to record and to post. This whole process has been a lot. I thought about taking it down or re-recording it a few times. It's hard to get this right, and I really do want to get this right. I'm also trying out a pre-written script today, so let's see how that goes. I got a teleprompter going on. So we'll see how it feels and if it feels right and natural. And so here I am. This is actually take 2 of this episode. Maybe one day I'll talk about take 1. But for now, here we are. And this is Where I'm At Now. Episode 3! I need like a theme song intro. Where I'm at now, something like that. We'll get it. We're working on it. Okay. If you haven't, please do check out the description of the episode below. There are some really helpful links and info. It's like right below the video on YouTube and somewhere in it on Spotify. All right. So last week, suicide, right? It was an adventure, and there's a lot I would want to add and maybe even take away from that episode. And I do hope to one day return to the topic. But for now, I'll just add this tidbit. When I was treating patients, one of my favorite parts of the risk assessment in suicide was asking the preventative questions, as in what are the factors that are keeping this person from wanting to die right now and going through with it. And so I want to throw that question back to you guys. What is keeping you from wanting to die today? Right. I mean, seriously, it's a heavy question. But how often do we ask that question? I remember one patient actually answered penne, as in the pasta. I guess he just loved pasta. Remember, there's no bad answers for what's keeping you alive today. Maybe it is pasta. Pasta's pretty good. But yeah, it's a really interesting question. Okay, so today's topic. But wait, there's more. Okay. Each week I want to touch a little on education for enmeshment and narcissistic dynamics. And so this week we'll be discussing darvo. That's D-A-R-V-O. This is a concept coined by psychologist Dr. Jennifer Freyd. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And taught to me by a good friend. DARVO stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim offender. It's a manipulation tactic used not exclusively, but often in narcissistic dynamics. And people throw the word narcissist a lot these days, and I don't want to diagnose from my bedroom here, and I don't even fully believe diagnoses are helpful, but I mean, they can be, but definitely understanding the behaviors associated with these diagnoses could be very helpful in navigating the treacherous waters that are relationships with these humans. Okay, so psychobabble, blah, 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 blah. I asked ChatGPT to give me an example of darvo from a narcissistic mother in an enmeshed dynamic with her son. This is not my mom. This is literally, I just said, ChatGPT, show me what darvo would look like, narcissistic dynamic mom, son. Go. Enmeshment. Go. And but many of you may find this style of conversation eerily familiar. So remember, darvo, that's deny, attack, reverse victim offender. Ooh. All right. So here's the scenario. The adult child tries to set a boundary with their mother. The child. Mom, I need some space. You call me multiple times a day and get upset if I don't answer immediately. It just feels overwhelming. And here's the darvo. So here's deny. That's ridiculous. I'm just a caring mother. I don't call that much. And here's the attack. You're being so cold and selfish. After everything I've done for you, you're just going to push me away? And here is the reverse victim offender. I guess I'm just a horrible mother who loves her child too much. I should have known you'd abandon me like this. So, right, it's a little exaggerated, but these kinds of conversations may be very familiar for you. And if they are in any shape or form, it should raise some red flags. I'm not saying move out of the house and head to Hawaii just yet, but this is definitely something to try to talk through with a friend or therapist or even ChatGPT. And if you're feeling courageous, potentially the person themselves. Though doing that, do be careful bringing constructive criticism to people in these states and who are showing these behaviors, because that can result in some really intense backlash. Remember, the only one you can heal is yourself. And that's coming from someone who is trained to actually treat these diseases. So, yeah, I have learned that lesson the hard way too many times. All right. So without further ado, the topic, avoidance much? Who, me? Couldn't be. So here's a quote from a song by Car Seat Headrest called It's Only Sex. It's not going to sound like a quote, but this is a quote from the song, trust me. Okay, so I've been reading all the sex blogs, and all they talk about is how it's okay to be gay and straight and bisexual and asexual and have sex however you like. But I don't care about hundreds of hypothetical people and their hypothetical sex deals. I care about me and my sex deal. What about my problems? End quote. Oof. Great song. So yeah, I could just talk about how harmful homophobia and transphobia can be from a hypothetical standpoint, and I will later in the episode. But I personally feel the best way to move the line forward is to get real with it. Make it personal, own your feelings, and know what's yours and what's not. And for me, well, deep breaths. So I've wanted to be a woman for most of my life, since about 9 years old. I used to sit and cry in the bathroom, begging God to change me into a woman. And then, well, didn't really work. And I was really ashamed about the whole thing, so I tried to bury it. That lasted for a bit. But then college came and those urges came back. And I experimented a bit, but was just so covered in shame about the whole thing. There's not enough toothpaste in the world to brush that feeling out of my mouth, or there wasn't. And yeah, mind you, I was so ashamed to even tell another person in my day-to-day lives that I used to explore these feelings only with prostitutes. I felt so alone in all this. It was really hard. I never really come out to anybody for most of my life until the age of 25. Drunk, I once told a friend I was bi, but took it back in the morning. I think I told some friends I was into some other friend, another drunk time, but we never talked about it again. See, sexuality is complex, as is gender. There is a part of me that loves being a man and feels very much like a man, and sometimes like a little boy. And there is part of me that is still sitting crying in that bathroom praying to be a woman. The man part of me is mostly straight and prefers to be with women, though is open. And the woman part of me is mostly bi, that isn't into both women and men. And then there's the romantic part of me that throughout my life was exclusively into women. I've never really been in love with a man. And that might be because of social norms and factors, maybe something more, who knows. But like the part of me that had crushes and has crushes, has only in my life crushed on women. Right. So what am I? Bigendered? Is that a term? Maybe. Bisexual? I guess. I like to say figuring it out. I'm figuring it out. That's right. But I'm not sure if that so neatly fits into the checkboxes. I guess maybe other. Right. Okay, so back to my journey. I finally came out for the first time when I was 24 after deciding to begin therapy at the start of my doctorate program. My therapist had actually been a longtime mentor from the age of 3, but this marked a major turning point in our relationship where I was finally ready to open up. At this point, I want to take an aside and just acknowledge the reality of gossip and stories people may make up after hearing this. I did not leave home because I am trans or bi, trans or whatever. Not the only reason, at least. I left home because I was experiencing emotional abuse. I wanted to create space from some enmeshed dynamics. I was just starting to understand. And I wanted to take a break after the stress of 5 years straight in a doctorate program. And I was transitioning out of the ultra-orthodox community. So that was a whole process as well, that I had been in for 3 years, or give or take. Yeah, and also because I've been searching for something more, something real, and something worth living for. Okay, right. Where were we? Therapy. Right. So was my therapy like straight camp? No, but it also wasn't not straight camp. My therapist was ultra-orthodox, and I was becoming more religious as well. It was certainly a tricky and problematic dynamic we didn't speak about enough. She wasn't convincing me to become religious, but she certainly wasn't slowing me down. And even recommended some religious centers that really changed the way I saw the world at that time in my life. I was happy about it and consenting at the time, but looking back, it's tricky. And I'm not, that comfortable around it. And so together, then, we colluded knowingly in an attempt to manage these feelings. We would give them space to explore at times, but months would go by with no reference to it. It was necessary. It was kind of ever present, and being bi-trans helped. I didn't feel like I was living a full lie. There is a part of me that is a straight cisgendered man, but that kind of ignored the other parts. And so I think our approach was to help me grow comfortable with the feelings and maybe act them out in the privacy of my bedroom or whatever with my future wife if she was comfortable, or on my own downtime or something. I really don't know what our goal was exactly. Being bi-trans and ultra-orthodox don't exactly fit together. And things got tricky as I became more therapeutically aware and inclined. I finally learned what validation looked and felt like from a random video in a training for work, a Brene Brown empathy video I posted last week, and I noticed some problematic instances where, throughout what we had called, I guess, therapeutic, I don't know what we called it, but I didn't feel very validated. And over again, I noticed instances of invalidation. And it gets even trickier considering my parents were paying for the treatment, therapy, whatever you want to call it. And my mom and even some of my siblings were also seeing this person individually from time to time. So considering one of my major issues, though unbeknownst to me at the time, was enmeshment, this whole scene is very problematic. During some of the harder times where my mom was being really tough on me and my therapist would tell me any other therapist would not send you back home, and which was a nice line, but not nearly enough to tell me just what was so problematic about the dynamic and to fully explain to me what enmeshment is and how it works. Right, I had no idea. I just knew it hurt to go home. See, enmeshment is complex, but it's really simple. It's when the needs of others become infused with your needs, so much so that you begin to have trouble telling the difference between the two. I better go home for the weekend or I'm a bad person, said my guilty self, walking into another heavy weekend of having my entire lifestyle questioned. Most of my conflicts at home then were around becoming religious, which is a complex story in itself for another time, and perhaps a future book I'll call A Baal Tshuva in His Mother's Kitchen. Right. So back to the trans stuff and therapy. On May 1st of last year, I successfully defended my dissertation. A few days later, in therapy, I discussed my desire to use my newfound time for some exploration I had been pushing off. Every week, I would stay at a hotel to work on the dissertation and ease my 4-hour daily commute, 2 hours each way. Props for Pops, thank you, Dad. And that dissertation, now that the dissertation was finished, I had more time. And I had been hoping to order a bodysuit. I had found on Amazon that I could use to explore what it would feel like to be a woman for a night, if just in the privacy of my hotel room. And my therapist, or maybe, I guess, call her a mentor, whatever it was, I never knew what to call it. And well, she didn't like the idea of the bodysuit. She thought it was some kind of upper limit theory, or something like I was self-sabotaging after a major success of the dissertation. I didn't agree with her. She thought I should focus more on finishing up internship, which would last a few more months. This was May, I wasn't done till August. And focus on shidduchim, which was the Jewish religious version of dating. And I was like, shidduchim? What religious woman is going to accept me as a trans woman? I needed to explore this first. Check this thing out. Right. So I had dated in the religious world already at that point. None that lasted very long, but in every date I wondered when, if ever, I would tell this to my partner. But, if you can't love yourself, who will? Okay. So after some back and forth with my former therapist, I finally relented and said, she finally relented and said, you could do whatever you want, And that was some great validation, I guess. Maybe not really. Right. And so the next day, I was in the hotel looking at that Amazon page for the bodysuit, and I just couldn't click the buy button. And it was not just because of the awkwardness of delivering this to my yeshiva-provided apartment, or the fears of this showing up on my dad's credit card bill. I think I bought a gift card. Right. And so I backed out, and I was headed for the sauna at the hotel. And there I was just crying, bawling my eyes out. Another man saw me and asked if I was okay, without assuming, he was soft-spoken. And, I just wondered if he would be safe to open up to. And then I thought against it and just said, thanks for asking. I'll be okay. Feelings? Who, me? Men don't have feelings. Back in the hotel room, I thought about making the purchase again, and I just couldn't do it. And so instead I wrote a poem. It's called Learning to Love, the Skin I'm In. I'll read it at the end of the episode today. So the next day was actually a miracle day for me. I ended up sharing the poem with a stranger I met on a hike. That beautiful person sent me to a poetry reading in Brooklyn. And the people there sent me to another poetry event. And the people there sent me to a regional Burning Man event where I wore a dress in public for the first time. It was fun. Right. 3 weeks later, I finally left my therapist. And that was after 26 years of some kind of dynamic together since I'm 3 years old. Right. I'm still mourning a lot there. It wasn't all bad. There was a lot that was very healing for me. But I'm not looking back. And man, am I glad I'm here now, getting a chance to finally talk about all this openly, as fully as I can. Right. So yeah, what were we talking about? Homophobia. So the Syrian Jewish community, according to Wikipedia, has over 75,000 members. Let's say, I don't know, that just feels like a lot. So let's just say it's half that. And let's just say there's, 2,000 to 3,000 youth between the ages of 18 and 30. Do you know how many have come out as gay? Because I don't. I can think of 1, 2, 3, 10. 10 would feel like a lot. And I'd be I haven't been there in a bit, in a few years. 15? That's out of 2 to 3,000. So if it was 10, that out of 2,000, that's 0.5%. Right. According to Pew-data reports, 17% of American youth between the ages of 18 and 29 think of themselves as gay or bisexual. 17%. Right. So those numbers next to 2,000 to 3,000 people would be between 340 and 510 people as gay or bisexual. In the Pew stats, 4 to 5% identified as gay or lesbian, whereas the other 12% were bi. So that's like 100 to 150 gay or lesbian people. And 4 to 5% trans. So that would get, again, 100 to 150 people with some overlap. Where are they? Where are you? Where? Right, and that's just the 18 to 30 range. So it's a longer conversation, one I hope to hit on next week. Are there other factors? Sure. But I don't think it's society that is making people gay. I think this has been around a long time, and society that's finally learning to accept people as they are for who they are. And with that acceptance, people are feeling safe enough in their feelings and to express their feelings. Right. So yeah, if you're out there, no pressure. I love you. You are loved. Just know that. And there are organizations that can help. I'm going to link them in the description. One for each kind of insular community. Organizations that help people from Jewish insular communities, Muslim insular communities, Christian insular communities, and secular insular communities. Along with a great video, or just, non-LGBTQ plus friendly communities. Anyway, yeah, so along with a great video of common questions when coming out. So yeah, I'm not saying go on YouTube and do this, right? But just know you're loved. That's all, and you're okay as you are for who you are, and maybe not by the people around you right now. And right, but there are those in the world that can and will make space for loving you as you are. Right. So homophobia. This doesn't just affect those with non-heteronormative feelings. The F word, anti-gay slur that used to mean a bundle of sticks had a major impact on my life, certainly. And I was privileged to take a course that spent an entire class just analyzing that word. There is a book on it we discussed called Dude, You're... And there is so much there. Specifically, I remember this idea of the word being like a hot potato for boys and men, passing it between each other. I'm not, you are. Or the feminized version, used as kitty cat, or, right. And so those words shaped our behavior and interactions. No one wants to get caught holding them. So each person tries consciously and unconsciously to dismiss all thoughts that it might be them. And this could really increase hypermasculine behavior and the negation of expressing emotion or anything else that could be seen as feminine or gay. And then, of course, the next step would be to pass it on. Oh, I'm not gay. You are, man. I'm not. You are. Right. And so male friend groups of those born in the 80s and 90s, certainly, or before, certainly know what I'm talking about, though this is probably still prevalent today. I would imagine, certainly in the community I come from. Right. And so that word was a particularly painful one for me. It was thrown at me by some family members even, ouchie, and friends. Sometimes the bullying was lighthearted. I guess you can call this lighthearted. There was one instance where some friends were messing with me so bad that I kicked them out of the house. And the next day, one of them came up to me and said, they spoke to their mom about it, and she said, it must have been his time of the month. Right. And, or some that was a bit heavier. Like in one instance, I'll never forget, I was sitting in my room with a friend, and I think I was just grabbing some sunglasses before we headed to the beach. And he was reading some tweets or something on his phone, or I don't know, something must have triggered him. Because out of nowhere, he just yells, "Trans people are monsters and should kill themselves." And I was like, bro, I'm literally right here, trying so hard to hide this, to serve everyone else. Please, please. Right, so I really said nothing, stayed quiet, and maybe smirked. So yeah, there are certainly no villains, but yeah, this was bad. This shouldn't happen. This is very sad and makes a great transition for this conversation to trans mental health stats and suicide attempt rates. I'm linking the study below. Among transgender individuals, 28% and 31% reported hazardous drinking and problematic drug use, respectively. 44.4% reported recent suicidal ideation. 6.9% reported a recent suicide attempt. 21% reported recent non-suicidal self-injury. In their lifetime, 81% of transgender respondents had suicidal ideation. 42% had attempted suicide, and 56% reported non-suicidal self-injury. Yeah, we spoke about this last week a little, but just imagine the difficult choice for a person, either to live in pain and hide and keep everyone happy, or come out and speak your truth, but with that comes all the shame and guilt upon the family. You know, it's tricky. And we can start to now understand that suicide attempt rate a little more. Heck, for some it seems like an easier choice, for their families at least, for them to die rather than live openly. And while many parents would say they would do anything to get their child back, it can be easier, so to say, at least for the family social status, to mourn someone who passed than to actively deal with a living child breaking the rules. As in, if someone dies, we can honor them and memorialize them, maybe even throw them a tournament in their honor and cry about how sweet they were, and even award someone, Morris always played with passion, so you win the Morris D. Franco Memorial Award for passion. And I'm not here to make this any harder for families who lost children. It's hard enough, and if you want to throw a tournament, that can be a beautiful thing. But I am saying that it is a really tricky dynamic, and while no one will admit it, it can be easier to have a son who is dead or sick and stuck in a mental health ward than to have a son who is alive and well and opening up about his gender and sexuality and speaking out against his community of origin. I'm linking a video from a former therapist named Daniel Mackler with more on this topic in the description, on how some parents don't love their kids as much as they say they do, and how some parents prefer sick kids. It's really sad. And I use that word prefer very carefully. It's not conscious many times. So would my family accept me? At this point, I think they'd take me back anyway I came. They just want me home. Or at least that's what they say. But well, it's complex. As much fun as it would be to go to a Syrian party in a wig and a dress. So here's a map to talk about it. So welcome. This is the map I was discussing. So this is a map of the last election of New York City. It's provided by the New York Times. Thank you very much. And as you can see here, and you can get free versions of this. I like this map because it included things outside of New York City as well, which I'm going to hit on. But you can get free versions. You just Google like New York City election map, and it's free. So most of New York City, as you'd expect, is in blue, but there are some red pockets, and we're going to focus on a couple of them here. So over here, we can start in Borough Park. So just, sorry, it's not showing up for you guys. I really want you to see the percentages. So, right. So yeah, so look there on the bottom left, you can see a 98% voting for Trump. That's 800 people. So that's Borough Park, ultra-Orthodox. Those are where you'll see a lot of the media focuses on in terms of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish population. Over here is where I was transitioning to ultra-Orthodoxy. This is Lawrence and Far Rockaway, so 94%. Right. It's tricky to say what it means, but just you can get an understanding of the conservative nature of these folk. And then finally, here's the Syrian Jewish community area. So it's a little complex, but it's basically this line down here. It goes a little in here, and some of these parts. But this is main Syrian land. So right. So that's a 90% Trump Kamala. We can go a little north. We get 91. 91. There's pockets. It varies. Over here, I don't know exactly if this is the area, but certainly these are some mainstream Syrian areas. You can just follow the map and figure out how that goes based on the redness of it. Yeah, so not all conservative, but very, very, very much so conservative. So some would even call these Bible Belt numbers, but that can feel extreme to say. Those are some big, 90-10, those are some big numbers. And while voting conservative doesn't necessarily mean you're anti-LGBTQ plus, just anecdotally and from a law perspective, we can just see some of those impacts. Like this peer-reviewed study on some of the anti-LGBTQ plus laws and their impacts. I'll link it. You can do your own research and make your own decisions on the matter. Okay, so we covered a lot today, but just one more story to really bring it home on what it means to feel loved for who you are and how important representation is. So as a kid, I would fantasize about running away and going through with the transition. There wasn't much trans representation in the media, or at least the media I was consuming beyond comedy. And so for me, the movies talked about trans prostitutes in Thailand. And I was like, okay, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll move to Thailand to transition and support myself through prostitution or something. In these fantasies, I was really guilty about leaving behind my family and community. So I dreamed up a robot that could take over my life. Heck, I even prayed for it. Like someone who would do all the things I was supposed to do, like go to school and get married and have a family and go to family gatherings and whatnot. Right. And so this past October, I was on the phone with my dad, and he asked me really sweetly if I would come home to be with him and my brother for a potential Mets-Yankees World Series. Mind you, I was a massive Mets fan growing up, and it was a huge point of connection for us. And this was my dream World Series. I'll write a book one day on how I broke my Mets addiction. I want to call How I Beat the Mets. But it's spring training right now. This is March. I'm missing the sweet voice of the Mets announcer, Gary Cohen, and the calming feeling of watching the fans sitting on the berm in Port St. Lucie. Okay, so back to the story, right? So the Yankees had clinched the World Series, and the Mets were in Game 6 of the NLCS, the semifinals, and it wasn't looking likely, but it was possible that this could be happening, and they could win. And my dad asked me, and I told him back the brave words that I would not be coming home, even if there was a Subway Series. It was painful, and then I remembered the robot fantasy I once had. I remembered that somewhere in my house was a poster of me. Back in 2020, during the pandemic, the Mets let people purchase posters to sit in the stands in place of the fans. And I still had that poster of myself, like screaming. And so I asked my dad to sit with the poster instead of me if they did make the World Series. You know, it wasn't quite the Cubs fan listening to the World Series with his dad on the radio by his dad's graveside, but, you know, could have been nice. And, right. And that reminded me of an old story from Rabbi Twersky, and I promise I'm almost done here, but it was about fish love. And he saw a man eating a fish sandwich. And the man said, "Man, I love this fish." And he said, "Do you really? Because it looks like you love eating the fish. If you really loved the fish, you would have found a place for it to swim in, not a sandwich to be eaten in." Fish love versus real love. Right. Look, I get it. I was there. It's not in line with the old world and religious values, these things I'm saying today. But even if you are in that world, just making space for some conversations, making space for feelings could go a long way. Letting kids know from a young age that it is okay and normal to have different kind of feelings, that maybe they like a friend of theirs of the same gender, or maybe they feel like a different gender, and what to do with it, you know? Look, I'm not here to tell you what to do. You can, talk to your local rabbi or a competent therapist. But yeah, just letting them know that it's okay to feel these things, that could go a long way to having them feel less alone. I was 9 when I was crying in that bathroom. And these conversations should have came when I was 7 or 8, maybe even earlier. "Hey, Mo, you might have some feelings." Maybe then I wouldn't have felt so alone. Wouldn't have had to wait till now to come out more than 20 years later. Not so alone anymore. Not so alone anymore. So, will I wear a dress now? Will I change my pronouns? Will I begin to transition? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm exploring. I'm figuring it out. I'll let you know as I feel safe and comfortable too. And if I don't go forward with it, I never want to be an example of some parent saying, see, he has the feelings and doesn't get the pronouns and the surgery and the pills. Why can't you be like him? Each person is unique in their needs, in their journey, on their time, and as is good for them. Okay. Without further ado, here's my poem. It's from May 6th, 2024, titled Learning to Love the Skin I'm In. It aches, it burns. I scratch, I itch. There's no escaping this. I can try to run. I can try to hide. There is no escaping the suit I wear. This suit of skin I was never fully comfortable in. I ask a question, a prayer, a hope that each day I come closer to loving the suit I'm in, and the one wearing it too. Whoever are you? Choices. I can cover it, change it, give it new names, accolades and doctorates, pinch, poke, and prod it. And it won't change. The fate is still the same. This is the skin I'm in, the skin I came with, and the skin that I'll go with until it wears away, back to the earth from which it came, or from which it was loaned, a suit I can never claim I own. And the choice, if there is one, is to love it. Or not. Not easy. Not by any shot. A life's work of learning to love the skin I'm in. For what it is, for what it is not, for what it can't be, and what it can. A poem of being and becoming. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a magically delicious